Good evening, good morning, wherever you are, depending on your time zone. We're delighted to welcome you to this masterclass. And I'm very excited today because the presenter is one of my favorite people in the whole CWC nationwide and global ecosystem. It is none other than my friend, Dr. Soham Patel, who is a triple board certified endocrinologist who is joining us all the way from Florida. So he's actually in a different time zone. It's late at night, and he's been gracious enough to join us. Hi, Soham. Good to see you
Hello,
again.
thank
So, as I
you.
said, he's a triple board certified in internal medicine, endocrinology, and lifestyle medicine. Lifestyle medicine is where his path and mine intersected, and we met a number of years ago. And I got to learn that he actually is one of the few doctors who practices what he preaches. Whatever he's about to share with us is his own experience, which is authentic, which he has applied to thousands of patients that come to his Center for Endocrinology and Nutrition in Tampa, Florida. And we're just delighted to glean from your wisdom and please share with us your knowledge. So, the format that we thought might be fun was a little bit of a conversation, a question and answer format. So, I would like to kick it off with a question to you, Dr. Patel, and that is really what is insulin resistance? And as a physician, how do I, when I see someone in front of me, how do I know that they might probably have insulin resistance just by looking at them and talking to them? Or do I need to do a lot of fancy testing? And really, what's the incidence? What is the scope of this problem? How much of our population is affected? Maybe we can just start off with some clear lay of the land. If you can start with that for us, please.
Sure. The insulin resistance, the reason why we are, trying to drill down on this particular aspect is because that's the starting point. Metabolic disease, many metabolic disease and type 2 diabetes definitely in particular. And it takes years and years of insulin resistance to slowly simmer under the surface before things start becoming clinically apparent. And those are the years that we many times lose because we don't pick up on this. And that's the time when you can actually take corrective action and prevent prediabetes or type 2 diabetes from developing. But if we don't take action, then we end up going down the trail of worsening metabolic health. And so insulin resistance, as the word suggests, is resistance to the effect of insulin in very simple terms.
So if I can
And
ask you to pause right there for a second. So you're saying that the what we see when someone presents with diabetes or has a heart attack is really the tip of the iceberg. The big iceberg of insulin resistance was building for a long time, and we were completely oblivious to it. Around how much time would it have been? Like 10 years?
10 years, sometimes 20 years or more. Because again, like I said, it's a very insidious, slow process that gets missed. And there are, signs that you can easily pick up if you are, paying attention to those. Yes, there are, lab work, lab testing that can be done to assess for insulin resistance as well. But even without the lab testing, there are signs that you can just look at someone and pick up, and that can easily help. Let's first start with how insulin actually works. So insulin is a hormone that is produced by our pancreas, which is a very important gland in our body. It sits in the abdomen, right behind the intestine, next to the gallbladder and the liver. So it's in a very tight spot. It's a very vascular organ, meaning there's a lot of blood flow to and fro from the pancreas. It produces 3, 4 different hormones. For our discussion, we'll focus on insulin. And there are particular types of cells called the beta cells, which are the ones that produce insulin. And insulin is a metabolic hormone, meaning it is essential to have insulin to metabolize any and every food that we consume. Now, most people may have an idea that insulin is needed to metabolize carbohydrates in our food. And that's true, but that's only the partial truth. Insulin is needed to metabolize fat, protein, and carbohydrates. And depending on what type of foods and in what proportion and what combinations you eat, can determine how much insulin is needed to be released by your pancreas to process that food. And the main organ that does all this processing is the liver. 50% of the insulin that we produce is taken up by the liver. Now, insulin is like think of insulin as a key that opens up a lock inside the cell. So imagine a cell and insulin coming in as the key, opening the lock, which opens up the options for the cell to take up glucose, which is the energy source for cells. So the glucose is taken up from the bloodstream because of the effect of insulin, and then the cell utilizes that glucose molecule to generate energy in form of called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. That particular molecule has a lot of energy in the phosphate bonds. And that's the molecule that's used as the energy currency of our body. So every chemical reaction, every process that happens in our body requires energy, and that energy is supplied by the molecule ATP. So glucose is used by the cell's machinery to generate ATP molecules. And that's how our body functions, our brain functions. So that's kind of the normal functioning of how insulin works.
So what you're saying is that body uses glucose, which is sugar. Common parlance, we say that sugar is the energy currency, and that sugar then is actually used to create ATP, which is the real energy currency. And you're saying, so far you said that insulin is produced by this very vascular organ called the pancreas, and insulin opens the doors so that the glucose can get into the cells for all this to happen.
Yes. So if the insulin cannot unlock that machinery for the cells to take up glucose, then the glucose stays high outside in the bloodstream, and the energy that the cells need to be generated by utilizing the glucose is not done. So you get lack of energy in the cell and too much glucose running in the bloodstream.
Right. But if ATP is such a good thing and glucose is needed by the cells, then why would the body become insulin resistant? It's like, hey, you're giving me money and I'm blocking the doors and saying, I don't want it. Why would I be resistant to the fact that Soham is giving me $100 bills?
Yes. So answer to that would be two-part. Part number one is insulin is needed to unlock that machinery. If insulin cannot unlock that machinery inside the cell so that glucose can come in, then that process doesn't happen. And why does that unlocking not happen? Because there is buildup of fat inside the cells, especially the liver. And so when there is more fat inside the liver cells think of it as there is enough energy stored. So they think there is enough energy inside the cell. We don't need more energy coming in form of glucose into the cell. So they somehow block the receptor for insulin, and the process that leads to the glucose channels opening up doesn't happen. I think the slides would really help to kind of pictorially show that.
Yeah, so let's get the slides rolling while we have this little back and forth conversation. So essentially, you're saying that this is a state of really of energy overload in the body or calorie overload in the body, which is a byproduct of the environment that we live in, where we're living in a state of caloric imbalance, excess, as relative to the energy that we burn. So it's really that, hey, my house is already full, my pillows are already filled with dollar bills, my mattress is full. So when Soham is ringing the door to give me more money, I'm resistant to that. I'm not even opening the door.
Yes, that's a very good analogy, because there is enough energy in form of fat inside the cells. Any more energy coming in form of glucose is being rejected by the cells. And the reason why this discrepancy happens is because fat does not require insulin's gatekeeping to enter the cells. So when we consume more than needed calories, or calories that are coming from too many processed foods or foods high in fats or refined foods, that energy gets transferred and deposited into the liver without any role of insulin. But for glucose to enter into the cell, insulin action has to happen the way it has to happen. And so that's where insulin resistance starts happening. So the second part of this process is where, because the glucose is not able to enter into the cells and it's staying high in the bloodstream, your pancreas is able to detect that higher level and it starts pumping more insulin, sending more soldiers to the front to make sure it can handle the onslaught. And initially, with more insulin, the cells somehow are able to listen to what insulin is trying to do, and they will start letting the glucose come in. But one of the effects of insulin is to convert. First, you let the glucose be utilized for energy generation, and then whatever is surplus to be stored as fat. So that fat stores, energy stores in the body inside the liver cell keeps getting worse and worse. So now we reach a state where the body is producing maximum amount of insulin. Your pancreas is like full-blown capacity, all shifts going, producing insulin, and it's still getting the same effect of resistance at the liver.
So it's a vicious circle. The more resistance, the more insulin is being produced. That's creating even more insulin resistance, right?
Yes, and the viciousness doesn't end here. It actually starts spreading more. So liver says, I'm getting all the misery of all this extra energy getting deposited inside me. I'm going to share the party with other organs. So the liver starts sending molecules of fat attached to a VLDL molecule, so triglyceride VLDL bond of molecules that starts floating into the bloodstream, and now those fat molecules start depositing into muscle cells. Muscles are the second most common organ in the body after the liver that picks up glucose as a source of energy, and again requires insulin for it to do that, entry of glucose. So same things that are happening in the liver are now starting to happen in the muscles. So we go from liver insulin resistance to muscle insulin resistance.
So when you were talking about liver insulin resistance, is that the same as what we call metabolic disease associated liver disease or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease?
Yes, yes. So non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or now the new nomenclature to kind of cover the whole spectrum, is the metabolic liver disease, is actually not an afterthought or a complication of type 2 diabetes, but actually is the starting process of insulin resistance developing and then leading to prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. And this doesn't end just there. The third part of this vicious cycle is the increased supply of this fat molecules into the bloodstream from the liver also ends up in the pancreas. So the beta cells that are the unique cells that are only type of cell that can produce insulin in our body start getting more deposits of triglycerides in them. And the higher deposits of triglycerides, which is a type of fat, the lower the ability of those beta cells to produce insulin. Dr. Roy Taylor out of UK has done some very phenomenal studies showing this effect, where increased fat buildup of triglycerides in the beta cells means lower insulin production. And if you are able to cut down of the lower that fat buildup in the beta cells, then you can actually ramp up the insulin production. So you are getting a double whammy. On one end, the main organs, liver and muscle, that are supposed to be receptive to insulin so they can take up the glucose and utilize it as a source of energy, are not able to do that. And on the other hand, the factories that are supposed to be producing insulin are having a diminishing ability to produce insulin because of the buildup of triglycerides in the beta cells. So we get a double whammy, which is called a double cycle hypothesis, where you have resistance and lower production happening at the same time.
So this is all because of energy excess. So essentially you're saying energy excess, calorie excess leads
We
to
can
first
go
the
to
liver
slide
getting
number 3.
saturated with fat, then muscle, and then eventually the pancreas itself, which was the producer of insulin, also getting attacked by this calorie excess in the form of fat.
Mhm.
Yeah, please, can you show us this, all of this in the way of
Yeah,
your...
right there. So think of the insulin as the key that unlocks the cell's machinery to allow the glucose to enter into the cells. But now you have a chewing gum sticking in the door lock in form of too much fat. And so you put in the key inside the cell, inside the lock, but it doesn't open the machinery, and you're not able to allow glucose to enter into the cells. So the dominoes, right? One thing leads to another, leads to another. When we're consuming foods which are excess calorie or have too much fats, about 15% or more of total calories per day coming from fat, then you get that involuntary deposition of fat inside the cells because it doesn't require any insulin action. And that leads to the insulin receptor not functioning properly. So insulin binds but doesn't do what it's supposed to do. So the glucose cannot enter into the cells. It's trapped inside the blood. Your pancreas is producing more insulin, and that leads to more insulin resistance. And if you're diabetic, you start needing more medicines. If you're on oral medicines, you start needing to need insulin. But again, the process of insulin resistance is not being addressed, and that keeps getting worse and worse. These are some of the optimal levels of insulin that I want everybody to kind of understand. So optimal fasting. So fasting means after 10 to 12 hours of overnight fasting, you get your labs drawn in the morning, and you check your glucose and you check your fasting insulin level. Your glucose should be between 70 to 85. And I remind everybody, I'm talking about optimal levels. I'm not just talking about normal or abnormal, but optimal. And the insulin level should be less than 5 microunits. As your blood glucose level starts going above 90 and starts hitting close to 100, so the range on the glucose is below 100 is normal, above 100 is high for fasting glucose. But even before you hit 100, you are actually on the ladder of insulin resistance. And same way, your insulin level is also starting to track from below 5, which is optimal, to 6 and 7 and 8 and 10 and 11 and 12 and 15 and 20. Routinely in my practice, when I screen patients for insulin levels fasting, I find their levels between 20 to 50 all the time. The highest I've seen is 100, a fasting insulin level of 100, and that person was so insulin resistant that every time that person ate, it was drowsy because the insulin spikes so much that it literally shuts you down.
So do
And
you need to do a fasting insulin level to diagnose insulin resistance, or can you diagnose it without lab tests?
so we'll talk about the physical signs, but if we were going to assess for it, then those were the labs. So acanthosis nigricans, that's the term, technical term, but essentially what it means is there is thickening of the skin and it turns more darker. This is just one of the pictures. Some of the manifestations of acanthosis can be quite gross to look at, but essentially it's darkening and thickening of skin, causing skin folds, and in advanced stages, it can be quite gross to look at. It creates this verrucaceous. Please go back to the previous slide. Verrucaceous, formations of the skin, like little fingers, little skin tags. So again, the root cause is insulin resistance and chronic inflammation. All the cells that help us heal from a cut or injury on an acute basis are actually being pumped and released into the bloodstream all the time. And it can be seen on multiple parts of the body. Common sites are elbows, knees, armpits, groins, but mid-back, forehead. A very common site for people of Asian and Hispanic ancestry is the side of the face, the temple area. that's the very first place or the side of the cheeks where you would start seeing this blackening. And so if you see someone who has those blackening of the skin or foldy skin or really getting irregular surface of the skin, you know that person is insulin resistance. And that again, this changes are there for 10, 15 years before you end up with a diagnosis of pre-diabetes or diabetes, type 2 diabetes. So if we can pick up on these changes, and this is without any blood work, if you can find these changes, you can pretty much say that person is insulin resistant. So again, this is a little technical slide, but broadly speaking, you can see the slide shows layers of the skin. We have the epidermis, and then the dermis. There are two layers of the skin. Epidermis is the outer layer, and then dermis is the under layer. And then we have the cells called the keratinocytes and melanocytes, and those produce the pigment melanin that gives us the different colors of the skin. So increased inflammation going on in the body and high levels of insulin both stimulate the cells to produce more melanin and create more growth of the layers of the skin. So that's where you get those skin tags, those black colored little extensions of skin that you see in the neck or in your armpits or on the back of your neck. So these are again early signs that do not require any kind of blood work, but if you see in any of your near dear ones or yourself, you should get that further evaluated with fasting insulin and fasting glucose. Don't just look at your A1C number, which is the 3-month average of your blood sugars. And if it's fine, don't have the sense that it is normal. Please go back to the previous slide. Stay in the impression that everything is fine. So it is important to pick up on the signs and take action soon.
Okay, so if we understand you correctly, you are saying that as a result of caloric excess calories from eating food that is more calorie dense than we require and not burning those calories, we are in a state of essentially energy stores being overwhelmed. And that domino effect starts with the liver, then the muscles, then the pancreas. And here you're showing that it's even affecting the skin cells, where essentially they're also showing signs and symptoms of that energy excess and high insulin levels cause this darkening of the skin as one of the first markers.
And this is happening because, like any hormone, insulin is supposed to be a pulsatile hormone. So when we eat, our body releases insulin to help our body process that food. And then it goes down to a very low level of insulin release that we call basal insulin, that is released throughout the day and night to make sure our body functions appropriately. But when we start having insulin levels running high all the time, that's when it starts messing up with other organs and skin and also many other glands. But in the conversation of tonight's, we'll focus on the acanthosis sign, which is very evident, very easily can be recognized, and just needs more awareness. And like I said, in Asian and Hispanic populations, this is the first area, side of the face or the cheeks is the very first area where you start seeing those darkening of the skin.
Beautiful. Yeah, I can already think of some people that I know that have that. So I'll be giving them a call tonight.
Yes.
So if it's as simple as energy excess causing this, and insulin resistance is the doors being closed for more sugar to come into the cells, what are some things that we can do to correct that? And even before that, another question would be that if the body has enough energy already, then why do people with insulin resistance or with type 2 diabetes feel tired all the time?
Because the primary source of fuel for the cell is glucose. Yes, it can use fat if glucose is not available, But if you look at anybody who has done some biochemistry study and looks at a process called the Krebs cycle, which is how the cellular machinery generates energy, that ATP molecules, one molecule of glucose generates anywhere from 36 to 39 molecules of ATP in a state of aerobic oxidation. But one molecule of fat is a lot less efficient in production of the ATP. So our brain dedicatedly uses glucose as a source of fuel, which is a very metabolic organ. Our red blood cells only use glucose for their functioning throughout the body. In the kidneys, there are two parts called the cortex and then the medulla. The medulla, the central part of the kidney, is very active part of the kidney, is only using glucose as its source of energy. So if you don't get the glucose, you're going to be feeling tired because your cells are essentially being tapped dry of its raw material to supply the energy that you need. And yes, insulin resistance, caloric excess, processed foods is one aspect of that, but there are three other aspects that can also lead to insulin resistance. So food is one aspect, sleep deprivation, poor sleep quality, which then leads to high cortisol, which then leads to high insulin, is another big factor. Chronic stressors, which we encounter throughout the day, if we are not doing things to kind of adapt to those day-to-day stressors, again, we get high cortisol levels, which leads to more insulin levels and insulin resistance. And then how active we are throughout the day also determines how effectively our body is able to utilize the insulin. So when we are active, our muscle cells, which again takes up a big chunk of insulin, and the glucose because of the effect of insulin, are a lot more receptive to insulin. And that's where, people who are diabetic and they are on many different medications, and then they get advised to start being more active. They start walking, in the evening after dinner, and now they are telling you that their sugars are going low, and that's because their muscles are taking up the glucose more efficiently. So the same amount of medications that they were on are becoming too much. Mm-hmm. So those four aspects: food, activity, sleep quality, and how you handle your day-to-day stressors, those four things kind of interplay with each other and create this perfect storm that leads to insulin resistance, prediabetes, and type 2 diabetes.
So out of the four, would you say the food is the most important?
I would say food, all are equally important, but I would start with food and kind of work through all four of those aspects step by step. You can see quick results from the food as you start, but it's also important to understand that you could have the perfect food routine and be very active, but if you have a crappy sleep routine and you're feeling completely under the water from your day-to-day chronic stressors, you will not see the impact of the food and the activity that you should be expecting with the changes. So all four aspects are important, but again, we want to start from one place, and food, I think, is a good starting place, but you want to cover all the four aspects step by step towards better health.
Okay, so what do we need to do about food? Just cut out all the carbs and...
So yeah, I have interesting slides. So I call it stop the crap. That's the first step, because before we talk about what would be better foods to eat, we want to talk about what foods to not eat. So crap, against, as you can see, it's an acronym for C for carbonated drinks, all kinds of soda and processed beverages. And I would highly emphasize this point. Please, please, please do not, I would say this to put it bluntly, do not fool yourself that you're doing something better by having zero carbonated drinks. Anything that says sugar-free or zero or diet is actually worse, because the artificial sweeteners are causing more damage to your microbiome and your brain and your overall metabolic health. So it's just best to get rid of all forms of carbonated or processed beverages. Refined sugars, Yeah, so refined sugars, things that are highly processed, have too many, sugars. I believe there are 60 different names and nomenclatures of sugar in the food industry. And Pankaj, you may correct me if you have some other information, but it's mind-boggling how many different ways, when you look at the label of different things, that sugar has been added into it, and you don't even realize that many times sugar has been added. Artificial foods, meaning the foods have been so much modified from their natural form, the fiber has been taken away to make them shelf stable, and too many additives and flavors have been added, which are again very addictive to our brain, and cause a lot more damage because we keep eating those foods because we cannot stop. There's a reason why you cannot eat just two chips. You have to finish the whole bag because they're the right crispness, the right texture, the right sweetness, the right tanginess, the right, spiciness, and all these other flavorings that get put into it give spurts of dopamine release in your brain. So your brain is like, I am enjoying this. I need more of this. And that's where it becomes difficult for us to stop by just eating a few chips. We end up finishing the whole bag. Processed foods, again, where they have been modified. You take a beautiful potato, and there are many different types of potato varieties. There are sweet potatoes, purple potatoes, white potatoes, yellow potatoes. Each have different nutrient profile. Yes, they're high in starch, they're high in carbohydrates, but they have a lot of fiber, minerals, and vitamins, and even protein. When you eat them in a please go back to the previous slide. When you eat them in a uh, unprocessed form, like a boiled or baked potato, that's different than eating that in a processed form where it's devoid of its goodness and it's been deep fried in the oil, which adds more inflammatory molecules and makes it a really non-healthy food. So stopping the crap, that would be the first step. This is one way to understand food, is understanding caloric density. So essentially, caloric density means what are the number of calories in a pound of a particular food. And as you can see, there are 5 different stomachs in the screen here. Each has different types of foods in it, but the common factor in all the 5 different situations is that they have 500 calories worth of food in each of the stomachs. So you can see that 500 calories of fruits and vegetables and 500 calories of rice, potato, and beans, either 90% to 100% fills up your stomach. And we have volume receptors in our stomach. So when our stomach expands, it sends signals to the brain that it tells us that we are eating enough food. It gives us satiety. And they are lower in calories compared to the volume. As you go down the screen here from left side, from the right side of the screen to the left, the fiber content keeps going down and the calorie count keeps going up. So any type of meat would only cover half or less than half of your stomach for the same number of calories. Cheese, barely 20%. And oil, even if it's the best quality oil, it will only cover only 10% of your volume of the stomach for the same number of calories. So eating foods which are high in fiber and lower in calories will give you more nutrients, more satiety, and automatically allow your body to start aligning and normalizing the insulin levels as your food starts getting better.
So, okay, so one thing that's very clear that you're saying is that eating a diet that's high on the more right side of this chart, that is higher in fruits and vegetables, is going to have less calorie density because plants come preloaded with fiber and water. So it's going to give you a sense of satiety faster. It's going to fill up your stomach with more volume without being as calorie dense. But a lot of people will argue that, hey, if I have a little bit of meat or oil in my food, I actually feel more satisfied, more satiety for a longer time. So that's one question that's coming up. The other is, do you have any thoughts on oil themselves? Like there's, a lot of people believe that seed oils are really bad because they're highly processed when you're getting safflower or sunflower oil and so on, and that ghee or butter may be better because it's less processed. So those are two questions here.
Sure. So let me start with the first one, which is okay, I need to eat some meat to feel full or satiated. Now, everybody has different life experiences, correct? And they come from different, childhoods and backgrounds and the way they have eaten all their lives. So this is not about perfection. Nothing is about perfection. It's all about progress. If you feel that, yes, you need to have a little bit of piece of meat to get that satiety, that is okay as long as you're having more fruits, vegetables, beans, and whole grains on your plate so that you're getting the fiber, you're getting the vitamins, you're getting the minerals, you're getting the phytonutrients, and getting the satiety. And there is, fiber has a bigger role, which I'm going to cover in a little bit. But it is not about perfection, it's about balance. So if eating 90% coming from whole plant foods and 10% coming from meat gives you the balance and the ability to sustain that, then that's the way you do it. It is, and but if someone is like, no, I want to go all the way and see how that works, that's also an equally, plausible and feasible way to do it. So you decide what works for you, but the consensus is to focus on more fiber and nutrient dense foods. So the higher you eat those, the better it is. Um, think of meat as a flavor, not the main course. Michael Pollan, he's a food journalist. He has extensively toured across the globe and studied many different cultures and cuisines. And he has a quote that I like a lot, and it says, "Eat real food," which means all the processed food goes out of the window. Mostly plants, in his definition, in his own words, I'm paraphrasing, mostly plants is having maybe 4 to 6 ounces of whatever type of meat you like, maybe once, twice a week, not 2 times a day. And the last part of that quote is not too much. And the way I interpret that is, intermittent fasting, so you can allow your body to have some gap from not having to digest food and also, help the liver detox itself at night. So eat real food, mostly plants, not too much. It would be a very kind of simple but very comprehensive way to look at it. The second part, the second question was about the seed oils and versus ghee and butter. So yes, the seed oils are processed, and there are many different processes, including, filtration and refining that involves a lot of different chemicals. Um, so that's that one issue. Number two, they're also high in inflammatory omega fats called omega-6 and omega-9 fats. Now we need omega-3, we need omega-6, we need omega-9. We need all three of them, but the ratio and the proportion in which you consume the omega-6 versus omega-3 determines the outcome in the body. So if you consume too many seed oils, your level of omega-6 fatty acids can overpower the omega-3, which are beneficial. And so that's where you can get more inflammation because of that. On the counter side, with ghee and butter, especially ghee, it is, yes, all the milk solids have been removed in the process of making the ghee. So there are no milk solids, there's no casein in it, no whey in it. But what you have remaining is essentially 100% fat, and not just fat, it is oxidized fat. So the LDL cholesterol particles inside the ghee have been highly oxidized, and those oxidized LDL particles are like little time bombs that can go off under the lining of the arteries and create more plaques. Now, if you look into Ayurveda, which is the ancient Indian way of science and well being, ghee has been used as a means of uh, medicine delivery. And there is a usage as a medicine delivery, meaning because it's fat, essentially it can cover all the herbs and the medicine, the herbal medicine with a lining of fat and that fat formation, which we call a Michel formation, can actually essentially go directly to the cell and transfer the nutrients directly to the cell. So it's an excellent means of medication delivery. But that said, that's what it is. It's a means of medicine delivery, not something to eat in dollops with every meal.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I know we have a lot to talk about. We're also getting a lot of audience questions, so we're going to keep things moving. Thank you for answering both of those questions. It's really, really, really helpful. It's love to talk more about food, learn about fiber. You were going to talk about fiber with
So I
us.
think if we can go to the next slide. So again, briefly, again, you can see it's a busy slide, but the plate on one side of the slide is the plate that the American College of Lifestyle Medicine has put forth in their guidelines, which essentially you look at it, it's half of it is fruits and vegetables. You have a lot of lentils and legumes, nuts and seeds, and then whole grains that are not ultra processed, with water and spices and herbs. So that again, focusing on that, and then also understanding that we need different colors of fruits and vegetables, and each depends according to the season. When it's summertime, we need things that are red and orange as we go into fall, because of the keratin that gets us ready for the winter. So each season has different colors of fruits and vegetables. So getting the rainbow of all those throughout your weekly meals is what gives you a lot of disease fighting, nutrients. Also think of this is kind of a molecular mimicry. Nature has designed things in a way which kind of mimics it. There's a reflection within reflection, right? So eyes, you cut a slice of carrot and you look at an eye that has a similar structure, and the keratin in the carrots, beta carotene, is also very beneficial for the eyes. You slice a tomato, it has the appearance of a slice of your heart, and the lycopene found in tomatoes is good for your heart. You look at a walnut, it looks like your brain because it also has the good things that can benefit your brain. Ginger is good for your stomach. Kidney beans look like the kidneys. Sweet potatoes, which have a low glycemic index, are beneficial for diabetes, have look like pancreas. Avocado looks like the uterus. So there's a lot of, citrus looks like the breast. So it's a lot of molecular, similarities that we have. And so if we eat, again, aligning with that, we see benefits to different organs in the body. So I was saying about the fibers. So there's a whole universe inside us that actually controls our whole mind and body, our mental health, our physical health, our immune system, our disease fighting capacity, our capacity to, prevent cancer development, our capacity to keep our immune system balanced so we don't get autoimmune conditions, our weight, everything is controlled by this microbiome. So microbiome is essentially trillions and trillions of these bacteria that sit in our gut and also are found on the skin and all the pores in our body. But most of it is in our gut. It only weighs about couple pounds, but in those couple pounds, we have trillions and trillions of these bugs, and there are good ones and the bad ones. The good ones help us regain good health. The bad ones make our health worse. The reason why fiber is important and why it connects to the microbiome is because the good bacteria, different types of good bacteria need different varieties of fiber coming from different whole plant foods, which will actually promote and help the right type of bacteria grow in our gut. So more type of fruits, vegetables, beans, and whole grains, more types of fiber, better variety of the microbiome, more healthier and resilient microbiome, better health. The studies have shown that if we eat fiber-rich foods, we can create the right microbiome that can produce more serotonin and dopamine in our gut than we produce in our brain. So when we say I have a gut feeling, it's actually a scientific expression because our gut is connected to the brain, and the gut has been called as the second brain. Is a quote from Hippocrates that, disease starts from the gut. And again, Ayurveda has also had the same approach, as we got to start disease reversal from the gut. So microbiome is important, and your sleep, your food, your activity, and your mindset, they all play a role with the microbiome.
Thank you. So what we've heard so far is that insulin resistance is because of energy excess and also high cortisol from stress, from poor sleep, and lack of exercise. Those are the four things that we have heard from you so far. Yeah, I would love to get into, okay, that's what causes it. So how do we reverse it? It sounds like we can reverse it by optimizing those same root causes, by cutting out the crap in the diet, moving more towards a whole food plant-based or a nutrient-dense plant-rich diet, right? Getting away from crap food, getting away from carbonated drinks, including the diet drinks, which are probably bad for gut bacteria as well. Getting away
Yes.
from refined foods, from artificial foods and highly processed, which are again calorie dense, highly palatable. You can't just have one, you have to have more and more. And when we eat, when we fuel the body and treat it in the way that is designed to be functioning at its optimal state, it will work in its optimal state and it can last us for 100 years without getting these so-called diseases of aging or chronic diseases or whatever we want to call them. And recognize the iceberg when it's forming, which is 10 to 20 years. So you could be in your 20s or 30s or 40s and think you're perfectly healthy. That's the time to recognize the iceberg. Don't wait till the blood test comes abnormal. By now, you're looking at the tip of the iceberg. A lot of the damage is already done, maybe. But Dr. Patel is saying that there's still hope that we can reverse it. So let's get into that. Please give us some practical tips and tricks on how we can reverse insulin resistance.
Thank you for the great summary, Pankaj. And I would emphasize this point that unfortunately, in the state of affairs in our society right now, we are seeing phenomenal rates of childhood obesity as well. So don't think of insulin resistance as something that will be only affecting 20, 30, 40-year-olds. We are seeing kids having insulin resistance developing from very early, and even them having in utero if mothers are not in the best state of health while they're pregnant with the baby. So at any time where we can recognize this, it's time to start working on correcting it, and not wait. And so we talked about the food aspects of how we can start improving the insulin resistance. The other three aspects that we talked, the stress management, the activity, and the sleep, as you can see here on the slide. So everybody knows how cute the babies look when they're sleeping, right? You can just look at them for hours if you had the chance, and just get so much peace looking at them, because that's the quality of sleep that we want to aspire towards. We want to get that beauty baby sleep that we need, because sleep is where all the detoxification happens and allows our body to lower cortisol, lower insulin, and get all the cleaning that needs to be done at night. So simple things like having a sleep buffer zone, right? So yes, we are surrounded with technology. We have blue light coming from our tablets and phones and TVs, but having a 30-minute or an hour buffer zone before your bedtime, where you shut off all your devices and go into a sequence of events that over time, as you keep doing it, trains your brain that this is what happens when you're about to go to sleep. So then the brain actually starts working in that direction as you start doing those things. It doesn't need to know more, because as soon as you do those steps, the brain knows, okay, it's time to shut down and unwind and go to sleep. So it could be a warm shower, it could be reading a relaxing book, a physical book, not a Kindle, in some warm light, not blue light. It could be journaling, writing your thoughts down of the day so you can offload your brain from going 100 miles an hour. doing some positive affirmations with that, and meditation or prayer, whatever that feels right to you. But creating that sequence of routine, whether it's 30 minutes, 15 minutes, or an hour. But as you keep doing it every day, our mind is a habit organ, right? So as you do it consistently, your brain picks up on that habit, creates the pathways that tells the body that, okay, this is what happens. And as this happens, you start shutting down and start going into relaxation and get into deep sleep. So that's one aspect.
So I
Uh,
think it's really critical for us to note here that Dr. Patel is talking about sleep right after food. So sleep is probably the second most important right after food, more important than exercise. Please notice that. So we don't want to compromise on sleep to get exercise. And
yes, that is a very important point that you bring up. And yes, I agree 100%. You do not want to sacrifice your sleep to get in your exercise. So if you go to bed at 12 and you wake up at 5 to go to the gym thinking you're trying to get exercise, I would rather have you sleep that extra hour and get the benefit of the sleep, and then work on your sleep routine where you can go to bed by 11 and not 12, and then wake up at 5 and go to the gym for that hour. But prioritize your sleep before you focus on the exercise, because you will actually, one, not see the ability to exercise. You will and I've experienced it with my patients and also myself when I would done workouts with sleep deprived status. I could not do the same number of reps and the same amount of weights versus when I was well rested. I was able to do more reps and even do higher weights because my muscles were able to take up that challenge. So prioritize your sleep, and after your sleep gets prioritized, then focus on the activity. And activity, I'm saying, not exercise. So it's not that you have to have an hour 3 times a week to go to the gym and that's only option for you. Activity means you can do whatever whenever you can. You can go for a brisk 10-minute quick walk after dinner. That will actually help your muscles take up the glucose, help you need less insulin, and you get better sleep at night. You could do some lunges or squats if you are in your office setting where you cannot necessarily leave your spot. You can just stand up and down, or you can move around, go for a walk at lunch hour. There are things that you can start including, 5-minute, 2-minute routines that can throughout the day create that activity profile that will benefit your body. So don't shoot for perfection, shoot for progress.
thank you. I have a little sleep rule that can help you remember what Dr. Patel just said. That's the 10-3-2-1 sleep rule. Avoid caffeine for 10 hours before bed. So if your bedtime is 9 p.m., don't have caffeine after 11 a.m. That's
Yes.
10. And then 3-2-1 is 3 hours before bed, no food or alcohol. 2 hours before bed, no work. 1 hour before bed, no screens. So 10-3-2-1, and you'll be good to go. You won't be needing to use the snooze button. You'll be resetting, re-energizing, rejuvenating your body, getting cortisol levels down, and starting the process of reversing insulin resistance or not getting it in the first place.
Yep. And then the last part is the mindset and how we handle our day-to-day stressors. And keep in mind that it's most of the times it's not the situation, but how we perceive and respond to that situation is what creates the internal stress and the cortisol release. Because you could put 10 people through the same situation, two of them will be like, whatever. Four may be a little put up, but they'll be able to handle. And then remaining will be like, this is such an experience, I'm not going through this again. The only difference is how each one of them is perceiving that situation. So one is that. Second is, again, simple things that can create a baseline of resilience in your day-to-day routine. So it could be something as simple as deep breathing, or as advanced as yoga or tai chi or qigong, all those different Eastern systems of wellness which each are a whole different, conversation in their own mind. Meditation, again, picture imagery or guided meditation to transcendental meditation. There are very different types of meditation. But something very simple that I always tell my patients to start working on is the 214 breathing. Again, many different types of box breathing techniques. I call it 214, and I'll explain why 214, and it's easier to do through the day. So 214 essentially means 2 seconds of breathe in, 1 second to hold, and 4 seconds to breathe out. The breathe out period should be longer than the breathe in. That's what triggers your parasympathetic nervous system. So I'm saying 214 because the typical ones that you will hear, 7 seconds or 4 seconds of breathe in, and then 7 seconds or 8 seconds of hold, and then 8 to 10 seconds of breathe out. Those things are not that easy to do in a busy day. Or if you're doing it, someone else who is looking at it will say, "Oh, are you okay?" They'll get freaked out if they think something is going on with you. But the 214 breathing can be done very subconsciously without alarming anybody else, and also being able to include that throughout the day. So when you wake up in the morning, do a couple minutes of deep breathing before you even get out. As you're going to your work, if you're not having to commute, then maybe do it again as you get ready to start your work. If you're having a long commute, that's the best time to do more of deep breathing while you're driving. In the middle of the morning, couple minutes of that again. Lunch hour, couple minutes of that again. Afternoon, couple minutes again. Evening, couple minutes again. Trying to fall asleep, couple minutes again. So when you keep doing that as a system, you will create a resilience in your body where you will have that spurts of parasympathetic tone going up throughout the day, which tells your body, don't do fight or flight, stay calm, stay relaxed, everything is okay. So again, pick what works for you, but don't make I don't have time as an excuse to not do it, because essentially everybody has the same 24 hours. It's where we prioritize those 24 hours, which leads to different outcomes. Even something else is simple and cost effective is, let's say you can do the deep breathing throughout the day. That's okay. Find 1 hour in the week and go to a state park or a wooded area or a garden or a trail somewhere around you that gets you in the nature. The sunlight, the birds chirping, the trees, the greenery, just observe that. Just get as much of that in you as you spend that hour. And studies from Japan, they actually call it the nature therapy, where you spend couple hours each week, and that has shown to lower cortisol levels, lower stress, and improve your health and well-being. So pick whichever modality that works for you, but keep working on your mindset and stress management.
How do we use food to reduce inflammation? Well, we already talked about cut out the crap, eat more of a whole food plant-based diet, eat more fruits and vegetables, get color in your food. That's how you'll. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
Avoid the crap and add variety of whole plant foods. It is not about perfection, it's about progress. So start where you are and keep adding more. And if you do, like to eat some meat, that is fine, as long as it's a flavor, not the main course. So you get the benefit of both. Because sustainability is the key, right? Doing something for a month or 2 months, but if you cannot sustain that for the rest of your life, then it's not going to give you much benefit. And you will keep yo-yoing because you will think, oh, this diet didn't work and that diet, and you will keep going through fad diets. So we want to work on sustainability. And for that, you got to work on what works for you with the goal in mind, towards more whole plant foods.
So you're saying pick something that you can sustain, and it's about a lifelong commitment. It's not about short-term fad diets.
Yes, it's a lifestyle transformation to avoid diseases from developing in the first place, or addressing them if they're already there. So it's not a short-term goal.
Fantastic. There's a question about whether fasting blood sugar levels are the same regardless of age, race, and gender. And the second part of that is, what about dawn phenomenon?
So the two parts. So the first part, whether it's similar across in terms of ethnicities and races, to my understanding, I don't know of any differences that have been, mentioned in the literature. In terms of ages, my training is, predominantly adult endo. So I believe for pediatric, ranges are a little lower, if I'm not mistaken, but for adults, teenagers to adults, is essentially the same.
So there's no difference based on race, age, gender. The numbers are the same. We're all humans. We all have the same blood. There's no such
Homo
thing as,
sapiens.
yeah, no blue blood and red blood. And the dawn phenomenon?
Yeah, so the dawn phenomenon is essentially what happens is when you have, so some people have a very heightened physiological response of increased cortisol that happens in the second half of the sleep. So normally, to get ourselves ready for the functions of the day, our body and nature has designed this mechanism where it starts releasing the spurts of cortisol in the second half of the sleep. So it helps us get ready for the day as we finally wake up in the morning and then go about doing what we need to do for the day. But for some people who either have a not good sleep or high stressors, or they are very extremely insulin resistant, this morning release of cortisol would be a lot more prominent. And because of that high cortisol, it interferes with the action of insulin. And so it makes your sugars go up.
So there's
And
a normal
that's
spike in glucose for everyone. It's physiological, but people with insulin resistance and high cortisol have an even higher spike.
yes.
That's what you're saying. All right.
So I get the question, oh, I went to sleep at 10 o'clock, my sugar was 100, and I woke up and it was 160. Well, the reason is because, if you had an interrupted sleep in terms of the texture, so you may not have woken up. If you wake up to use the bathroom, that's definitely an interruption and your cortisol goes up. But even without waking up, if you don't get the deep stages of sleep like you should be, and you're staying in the shallow stages of sleep, whether it's sleep apnea, where you don't breathe properly, or you're getting, you had too much caffeine through the day, so you did not get relaxing sleep, or you had too much blue light in the evening hours, so your brain is not able to shut down and do the relaxing sleep. From many different reasons, if you don't get relaxing sleep, you will get higher blood sugars in the morning, even without any food through the night.
Excellent. Thank you. Question about fasting. Do you think it's, I mean, a lot of people swear by time-restricted eating 16/8 or not eating for 1 or 2 days in the week. And of course, there's so many religious fasts as well.
So fasting, again, as you alluded, has been going on for millennia across different traditions and cultures across the globe. There's a lot of health benefit to fasting, and yes, there are many different protocols. You hear about 16/8, or 12-hour fasting, or time restricted feeding, and many different protocols out there. Again, sustainability is the key. So it's not about perfection, it's about what works for you. But at a minimum, what I would definitely suggest is you need to have 12 hours of break from food every day. So if you stop at 8 at the latest, so that gives you a couple hours of no food before bedtime, then you don't eat till 8 next morning. That's the bare minimum. But if you can extend that to 13 or 14 hours or even 16 hours, then that's even better. But not at the cost. Again, you have to see what works for you. So I see patients where they're trying to do 16-hour fasting, but that last 2-3 hours of fasting to get to 16 hours, they are so miserable, and they're like, what should I eat? What should I eat? What should I eat? And they're all stressed up and worked up. It is defeating the purpose of fasting. So you start with 12 or 10, wherever you are, and keep adding half an hour, every couple of weeks to your routine where you can get to a minimum of 13, 14 hours of fasting overnight, or if you can do 16 hours. Personally, I've been doing fasting over the last 3 years. So my routine now through the weekdays, I do 16 hours. So 16, I don't eat breakfast. I eat my first meal is my brunch or lunch. And then I have a snack around 5 with fruits. And then I eat dinner around 7 and nothing after 8 for sure. And then on Saturdays, I do a longer fast where I skip lunch as well. And I eat an early dinner around 5 and 6. So I get 22 to 23 hours of fasting.
Extended fasting, where some people are eating, essentially fasting for 23 hours by eating one meal a day.
So that 1 meal a day, again, if you are comfortable doing, 23-hour fasting and just eat 1 meal a day, and you're comfortable doing that, that's great. But the timing of that meal is important. If you're eating that one meal at 10 p.m., it is not going to give you the benefit you're looking for. So if you're doing a 23-hour fast, that one meal should be around 3, 4 in the afternoon. So you are in sync with the circadian rhythm.
Okay.
As the sun goes down, your digestion capacity also goes down. So if you are comfortable doing 23-hour fasting and just eat one meal and eat enough calories that you need for your day-to-day function in that one meal, that is fine, that is great. But eat it around 3, 4 in the afternoon, not 10 at night. And again, like I said, whatever works for you. If sustainability is the key.
Sustainability is the key. Very good. A question about the darkening of the skin. You talked about acanthosis nigricans. Somebody's asking if there's specific levels of insulin and glucose when the darkening starts, because they know of some acquaintances who didn't have any external symptoms, but diabetes was found on their blood work.
Yeah, so I don't think there's any quantification of, okay, this is the level of insulin and this is the level of darkening, to my understanding. Uh, but if you have darkening skin or if you have skin tags, you have folds that look like velvety skin or has, too many, creases in it, folds in it, or literally too many skin tags, uh, at that point you are insulin resistant already. So and you could be, that may not have been picked up and now you're pre-diabetic or diabetic, but that insulin resistance has started a few years ago. So I don't think there is a number correlation, but if you start seeing any of those signs, you're getting insulin resistant, you need to get your levels checked and start working on the lifestyle changes that can help you start improving that step by step.
Beautiful. Here's the next one is a little bit of a kind of more specific, and we don't want to give specific medical advice, but more general. This is so I'm going to change it to make it more applicable to everyone, which is my A1C is 6.2. Different docs have different opinions. Lately, my doctor says don't worry until it's 7. I have a healthy lifestyle in terms of diet, exercise, sleep. My family members have diabetes. So what should I do? Should I worry about 6.2 or should I wait until I go to 7?
So no, there is no time waiting. You are pre-diabetic. And again, this is not specific advice. We just, with the A1C of 6.2, you are in the pre-diabetes range. Waiting would just make things worse, and you would lose valuable years and times to actually take corrective action and prevent diabetes from developing. Genetics is only 5 to 10% of diabetes history. There are some genetic syndromes of diabetes, and again, it's a whole different conversation. But that is a very small percentage. A majority of it is lifestyle related. I would say that if everything is fully dialed in your lifestyle, then your A1C should not be 6.2. So the fact that it is 6.2, I think there is some space for improvements in your lifestyle. And like I said, those 4 aspects, your food, your activity, your stress management, and your sleep quality. So I would definitely not wait. And delay the opportunity to act because you are losing precious time. And I would also add this corollary: people of Hispanic and Asian ancestry do not have to have even at pre-diabetes levels, which A1C of 6.2, I have seen patients, and the literature also describes that, where you can get retinopathy, which is diabetes damage in the back of your eyes, which can affect your vision, and neuropathy. You feel that tingling, pinprick sensation in your hands and feet that can develop even when your sugar levels are in the pre-diabetes range. So waiting is definitely not an option.
Excellent. Thank you. Going back to the question about healthy fats, we talked about vegetable oils and so on. So someone's asking if cold pressed oils are better than the alternative. I don't know what is it, warm pressed oil?
So I'll take the example of the extra virgin olive oil, and yes, the quality of the olive oil definitely does play a role, whether it's cold press or refined. Refined obviously is more processed. Cold press has more antioxidants and polyphenols, which are the compounds that help us lower inflammation. And the cardiovascular benefit that has been seen in many studies is because of those polyphenols. My approach is I would rather eat the olives so I get the benefit of the fiber and the polyphenols and the healthy fats all in one go. But if I had to use some extra virgin olive oil, good quality, cold press, organic extra virgin olive oil, I would use it as a flavor, a little drizzle on your salad, not just drench everything in extra virgin olive oil because it's good. Because it's all about the amount, too much of a good thing can also turn bad. So yes, it has benefits, but we don't want to overdo that where we can actually get the downsides of it.
Fantastic. I think the next couple of them you already answered, so I can just go through them quickly. Are we going to get reversal of insulin resistance? Yes. I mean, that's what we're talking
That's
about
the
here.
goal. That's the goal.
Lifestyle, with
Versus
food,
resistance.
with exercise, with optimizing sleep and stress, we can reverse it. That's the key. Is Ozempic a good idea? So I think, yeah, we can give a short answer. I can kick off and you can add. And so these are the glucagon-like peptide, GLP-1 agonists. The Ozempic is one example of those drugs. And our body is already producing these peptides. So by living your life in the way that Dr. Patel is suggesting, we can produce Ozempic-like chemicals within the body itself, rather than taking an agent from outside. When we put anything from the outside as an exogenous agent, it will cause other imbalance. And there's some serious concerns with medicines like Ozempic, one of which Dr. Patel and I were just talking about yesterday, which is that you lose weight, but half of that is muscle weight. So you're losing your muscle mass every time you go on these medicines. Once you stop it, you gain the weight back, you're going to gain only fat. So as the more of these cycles that you go through as a yo-yo dieter with drugs as well, you're increasing the percentage of body fat and decreasing your lean muscle, which is going to be very harmful in the long run. There's other concerns with drugs like Ozempic, such as thyroid cancer. They cause a lot of nausea. So probably not a good idea, certainly not in the long term.
So yes, and we had actually shared our thoughts, yesterday. So what I would add to that is the only limited scenario that I do, suggest or consider these agents is when uh, someone is 300, 400 pounds, or has significant issues like they're having heart failure, even at a lower weight, or having issues or having fatty liver to the point where it's going to turn into cirrhosis or liver failure pretty quickly and needs to have weight loss. I use these drugs as a jump start for the person to be able to see that they can lose weight, because we need to kind of also see the effects of this to kind of get into the routine of doing the changes. So this is my only approach where I use this is as a jump start to work on the lifestyle changes, and as you get on a better routine, kind of wean you off this, so then you get the least amount of side effect exposure and get the benefit of it at the same time. But it is definitely not a long-term solution. It helps lower your insulin levels because of the weight loss, but it comes with a lot of baggage. So if you're relying on just those to lower insulin, you are going to end up with too much more problems. So use it as a jump start in the situations that you absolutely have to for the least amount of time, and then make use of lifestyle transformation to gain back your health.
If insulin resistance develops so many years before the blood sugar and A1C levels go up, why don't we check insulin levels or some other biomarkers earlier in life that will tell us that insulin resistance is already there? And another person asked a similar question. Why is it that insulin resistance check is not advised as often as, say, HbA1c?
So if you remember one of my slides about optimal insulin, again, it's an awareness and education issue. I'm trying to do my bit to share the insights. But yes, this levels should be checked on everybody, and not wait till the A1C runs high. And even as you can see from the earlier question, even with an A1C of 6.2, I think even in today's day and age, patients are being told that, oh, you're fine, we'll wait till it's 6.5. So there's a lot of inertia and obviously need for education in the medical community, and also awareness in the patients to bring this up to their physicians and practitioners that, okay, I want to get my fasting insulin and fasting glucose levels checked so I can see where things are and not wait till the A1C starts going up. Because again, if you look at the A1C, it's a spectrum. It's an average of your blood sugars over 3 months. So it's not like there's a switch that turns on at A1C of 5.7 telling you you're pre-diabetic, and then another switch that turns on at A1C of 6.5 telling you you're diabetic now. It is a spectrum.
Process.
The earlier we can pick ourselves up in that spectrum and reverse the course, the better it is. So in A1C, I encounter this all the time, and I'm spending 30 seconds here because it's so important. If your A1C is 5.6 or 5.5 on your physical, annual physical labs or preventive exam, don't think it's fine. You're already starting to go up on the insulin ladder there. So get your insulin, glucose and fasting insulin levels checked to kind of see where you are, so you can start making actions to correct it. Because one night you're 5.6 and the next day you're 5.7 is not going to be much different. You're in the same trajectory. So act early. And yes, we need to share this message as wide as possible, that we don't need to wait. We need to check and identify things early on.
But then you're saying that there are ways in which we know if somebody has insulin resistance. You talked about the skin markers, also high triglycerides, high blood pressure, increase in belly fat, right? Low HDL, sort of the typical profile that we see in South Asians with the big belly and skinny arms. I mean, that's already screaming at you that, hey, insulin resistance is here. You don't necessarily need to go to the lab to find out. I mean, if your waist circumference is increasing and your triglycerides are up, your HDL is low, your blood pressure is high, you have metabolic syndrome,
Yes.
which translates to insulin
Yes.
resistance. So you don't necessarily need some fancy biomarkers just to confirm what's quite obvious and staring you in the face every day when you take a
We
shower.
wanted to quantify,
Yeah.
to see where you are, and then kind of maybe 6 months later check it again to see what changed with making the changes.
Right. So
Help
what's
you
more
understand.
important is making those changes and making a
Yes.
commitment to change the lifestyle. Okay. What kind of oil do you use in your house for Indian cooking, Dr. Patel?
So we use dry roasting for our spices in many dishes, essentially. So we heat up the pan to medium heat, and the way to identify where perfect heat is sprinkle a drop of water, and if it vaporizes right away, the heat is perfect. If it circles around on the pan before it vaporizes, then it's still not hot enough. So when you do that and you put your spices there, the mustard seeds, the cumin seeds, those will pop just like they would pop with oil and stuff. So that way we can cut back on a lot of oil usage. And then when we do have to use, there are some vegetables like parwal or bitter gourd Karela, which do require a little bit of oil. So in those, we would add, organic avocado oil a little bit to make sure it doesn't stick to the pan. You can add tomatoes or onions to the dish from the get-go, which will sweat water and also help you from not needing too much oil and prevent the vegetables from sticking to the pan. So there are many ways you can, lower the oil usage. And if you do want to get the benefit of extra virgin olive oil, you want to add it cold after the cooking, not heating it up, because if you heat it up, it's going to turn rancid and you're going to not get any benefit and get more inflammatory molecules.
Awesome. I know we are all now 1 minute over time. Can we do one last question?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, this is from one of our sort of Silicon Valley biohacker type question. It's about metformin. Low-dose metformin is used for weight management and for decreasing oxidative stress. And there's some in the anti-aging community who think that it can help them live until 220. Your thoughts?
So metformin is a multifaceted drug. It has definitely gained more attention in the last decade as an aging intervention. Metformin works on the on your liver cells predominantly, and even within the cells, there is a machinery called the mitochondria that generates the ATP. Remember our conversation earlier? And so there is a there's a chemical reaction called the NAD-NADP complex that does this whole reaction, and metformin works by sensitizing that part of the reaction. So it has shown benefits in preventing cellular aging and longevity benefit. The biggest downside with metformin is cause a lot of gastric issues. You get nausea, belching, diarrhea. And so there are extended release forms of metformin which do less of that. But if you can handle it, that does have a benefit, of improving that cellular machinery. Personally, I'm of the approach that I would maximize everything I can on my lifestyle changes. If my goal is longevity, I don't want to be adding more longevity at the cost of taking a medicine. But if there is, insulin resistance developing that has not been able to be fully addressed with lifestyle changes to the extent that you could do, then aiding that with a little bit of metformin is of use. But again, yes, metformin has been used, and there's definitely data that supports its use as an anti-aging, strategy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patel. You've been so generous and gracious, and thank you for sharing your wisdom and answering all our questions. I know it's late, and from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of Crack the Wellness Code, we sincerely thank you. Thank you for your valuable insights.
Thank you for having me as part of this movement.
Yes.
And